Hello everyone, myself Abhilash, biology lecturer, Vishwamanava Composite PU College, Chitradurga. Today we are going to see a first chapter of second PU biology, that is reproduction in organisms. We know that lifespan is a period from birth to natural death, and lifespan varies from species to species. For the purpose of lifespan, size of an individual does not matters. We know that the crow having a lifespan of 15 years as well as parrot having a lifespan of 140 years. So both are having same size, but the lifespan is varies in between them. So for the purpose of lifespan, size of an organism does not matters. And mayfly is an organism which is having shortest lifespan. So every organism has to die someday. If the organisms are dying, how come these are existed for several long years? So that is why the concept of reproduction comes to a picture. Every organism born grows and it will becomes mature and finally it become old and died lastly. So in between, if the organism will reproduce of its own kind and those organisms led to their life as their parents, and this cycle will be continuous. So that's why the reproduction will come to a picture in this major concept. Reproduction is a fundamental feature of living organisms which involves the transmission of genetic material from one generation to the next generation, ensuring the survival of species over a long periods of time. And we know that reproduction is a biological process, it is not a physiological process. Next, significance of reproduction. It helps to retain the particular species of living organisms. And transmission of characters from one generation to another generation is possible through only reproduction. And sexual reproduction brings about variation. Variation leads to origin of new species with new characters. Then factors responsible for reproduction. There are mainly three factors responsible for reproduction. One is internal physiology, habitat, as well as environment. Based on participation of organisms, the reproduction is classified into two categories. One is asexual as well as sexual reproduction. We know that sexual reproduction is a biparental process, whereas asexual reproduction is a uniparental process. And asexual reproduction occurs in lower organisms such as yeast, sponges, as well as bacteria. Sexual reproduction occurs in humans and other higher vertebrates. And next, in asexual reproduction, the offsprings are identical to parents, that's why we call them as clones. But in sexual reproduction, they are varies in nature. And next, we can see a types of reproduction in a brief chart. So asexual reproduction is once again divided into fission, fragmentation, budding, sporulation, that is spore formation, regeneration, and vegetative propagation. Types of asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction mainly have several categories. Let's discuss one by one. First one is agamospermy. It is a method of asexual reproduction. Here the offsprings were formed without involvement of male and female gametes, and it is seen in ferns, that is pteridophytes. And here we discuss one more small concept, that is parthenogenesis. It is a modification of reproduction process in which an egg develops into complete offsprings without fertilization. So it is a monoparental process, and parthenogenesis is occurs in both plants and animals. In case of plants, we can observe in banana, pineapple, as well as figs. In case of animals, we can see in rotifers and worker honeybee. Next, we have sporulation or spore formation. It is a process in which organisms produce specialized structures known as spores. Spore is a reproductive structure formed to tide over unfavorable climatic condition over certain extended period. The commonly produced structures are conidia, zoospores, sporangiospores, and chlamydospores. Let's discuss one by one. First, we discuss zoospores. Zoospores are special kind of motile and flagellated spores produced inside the zoosporangia. These spores are usually naked without cell wall. The flagella helps to swim aquatic habitat for dispersal. Example we can see in albigo, a fungi of phycomycetes. Next, we discuss sporangiospores. These are non-motile spores produced inside the sporangia. They are also known as endospores. They disperse through wind. Example, rhizopus, a fungi. Next, we discuss climadospores. These are thick-walled resting spores produced directly from the hyphal branches. They store reserve food material and capable of withstanding long period. Example, Climadomonas. Next, we discuss conidia. These are exogenous, non-motile structural outgrowths commonly found in many plants such as Penicillium and Aspergillus niger. These spores produced at its tips a special hyphal branches known as conidiophores. Next, we discuss gemmules. Gemmules are the asexual reproductive structures formed in sponges. Next, we discuss vegetative propagation or vegetative reproduction. Regeneration or formation of new individual from any part of the plant, that is root, stem and leaves of the body, is known as vegetative propagation. And the parts that are involved in vegetative propagation are known as vegetative propagules. And this vegetative propagation has various significance. So if you see a significance of vegetative propagation, the first significance that come to mind is growing of some seedless fruits such as grapes as well as banana. And this vegetative propagation helps to produce genetically and morphologically identical plants such as clones, and it is easier, less expensive, rapid method of propagation. Through vegetative propagation, superior quality of flowers and fruits can be obtained, and that helps to removal of common infections from the parents. And vegetative propagation is broadly categorized into two types: natural method of vegetative propagation as well as artificial method of vegetative propagation. And we told that there are some vegetative propagules or the structures that helps in vegetative propagation. Here are the list of vegetative propagules. Next, we have artificial methods of vegetative propagation, that is includes cutting, layering and grafting. Cutting: a part of stem is cut and the cut end grows into new plant when it placed on moist soil. This method is mainly performed in some plants such as mango, guava, lemon, lychee and rose. Then layering: the stem of plant is bent down until it touches to the soil. The stem is then cut once it develops roots and grows into new plant. This is common in case of rose, jasmine as well as lemon also. Then grafting: the stem of a plant is cut and then fitted to another strong plant and covers with grafting wax. Example, apple, oranges and watermelon. Next, asexual reproduction in case of animals. So in case of animals, we have various categories of asexual reproduction, that is fission. Fission is of two types: binary fission and multiple fission. In binary fission, a single parent simply divides into two daughter cells without involving any fusion of gametes. It can be seen in bacteria also. So this is a schematic sketch of binary fission. Next, budding. Budding is a method of asexual reproduction in case of animals, which is common in hydra as well as yeast. So in both the budding, in both the parents, what happens is at the time of reproductive maturity, the hydra as well as yeast form a small outgrowth known as bud. This bud gradually develops and it is still attaches to the parent. Whenever the bud will develops completely, it will detaches from the parent and forms a new individual. Next, we have sexual reproduction. Involves formation of male and female gamete by two individuals of opposite sex. Offsprings produced by the fusion of both male and female gametes. That's why the offsprings are not identical to their parents. That's why here we cannot observe clones here. Next, different phases in sexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, we have mainly three phases: juvenile phase, reproductive phase, and senescent phase. Juvenile phase, the period between birth and sexual maturity, is known as juvenile phase. In plants, it is known as vegetative phase. Then reproductive phase. Some plants show flowering in particular season and some other flowers in all season. Some other kinds some other plants like bamboo species flowers once in their lifetime, that is, they are known as monocarpic plants. And Strobilanthus kuntiana, a Nelakoranchi, which is found in the western Ghats of Karnataka, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu, which produce flowers once in 12 years. And the female placental animals exhibit cyclic changes in activities, ovaries, and accessory glands, as well as hormone during the reproductive phase. And here, in reproductive phases, which can be divided into two cycles, one is menstrual cycle and estrous cycle. As we know that menstrual cycle occurs in order primata, that is includes humans, monkey, as well as apes, whereas estrous cycle, which is occurs in organisms that does not belongs to a order primates. So estrous cycle is found in non-primates, such includes cow, sheep, rats, deer, dogs, tigers, as well as etc. Then menstrual cycle. This cycle consists of menstrual phase, whereas estrous cycle we cannot observe this phase. And in menstrual cycle, blood will flows, but estrous cycle this phenomenon is cannot be visualized. Next, the third phase is senescent phase. It is a last phase in which organisms has gradually become older and their metabolic activities gradually decreases and finally leads to death. It is also known as death phase. Then events in sexual reproduction. So the organisms that undergo sexual reproduction that have mainly three events: pre-fertilization, fertilization, and post-fertilization. Pre-fertilization, all the events that occurs before the process of fertilization or before the fusion of gametes, we call them as pre-fertilization, which includes gametogenesis and gamete transfer. As the name indicates, gametogenesis, the process of formation of gametes, is known as gametogenesis, and gametes are haploid cells, we know that. And based on the structure or appearance, gametes are categorized into two types. If both the gametes are look similar, we call them as isogametes or homogametes. And if both the gametes are look different to each other, we call them as anisogametes as well as heterogametes. Then gamete transfer. Usually the male gamete are motile and female gametes are non-motile, except in fungi and algae, in which both the gametes are motile. In simple plants like algae, fungi, bryophytes, and pteridophytes, water is the medium through which male and female gametes moves. The number of male gametes are much more than the number of female gametes, as most of male gametes fail to reach the female gametes, and it is common in case of human reproduction process also, because the sperms are produced more in number compared to a single egg. In higher plant, pollen grains are carrier for male gametes and the ovules has eggs. So the pollen grains must be transferred from anther to stigma and facilitate fertilization. The transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma, we call them as pollination. Next, the second process is fertilization. Here the fusion of male and female gamete is carried out, and this fusion of male and female gamete is known as syngamy. Then if based on medium, fertilization is categorized into two types. If the fertilization is occurs within the body, we call them as internal fertilization, which is common in humans. And if the fusion of male and female gametes occur outside the body in any medium, we call them as external fertilization. That includes frog as an example, fishes also. Then post fertilization changes, that is the changes that occurs after fertilization, during which the zygote will develops. It is a diploid structure formed by the fusion of haploid male gamete and female gamete. Next, embryogenesis will occurs, that is the zygote will develops into embryo. So embryogenesis, the process of development of zygote into an embryo, is known as embryogenesis. Here zygote undergoes cell division, that is mitosis, and cell differentiation. Oviparous are the animals which lay egg, and development takes place inside the egg, and viviparous animals give animals that give birth to young ones directly. So we are the example for viviparous, and birds are the example for oviparous animals. So if you see, post fertilization changes in case of plants. So zygote develops into embryo, ovule develops into seed, integuments of ovule develops into seed coat, and ovary developed into fruit, and ovary wall develops into pericarp, that is fruit wall. Next, we discuss some of the important NEET questions. First one, single-celled organisms are said to be immortal because they grow indefinitely in size, they can tolerate any degree of change in temperature, they can reproduce throughout their lifespan, they continue to live as their daughter cells. So option is, the correct answer is option D, that is, they continue to live as their daughter cells. No individuals is immortal except single-celled organisms such as amoeba. It is due to the fact that they divide and continue to live as their daughter cells. Which of the second question, which of the following statements is correct? All the individuals of a species have exactly the same lifespan. Similar organisms always have shorter lifespan and vice versa. Lifespan of an organism is the time period from its birth to its natural death. No organisms may have a lifespan of several hundred years. So the correct statement is third statement. Lifespan of organism is the time period from its birth to natural death. Then the third question, which of the following having longest lifespan? So the answer is banyan tree, which is having longest lifespan of 200 to 300 years. Next, fourth one, read the following statements about reproduction and select the incorrect ones. So we have to select the wrong option. Reproduction, it is a biological process in which organism give rise to young ones. It is correct only. It enables the continuity of species. That is also correct. It produces genetic variation in organism. That is also correct. So the wrong answer is, it maintains populations of the young and adult person only. It is not correct, because reproduction maintains population of young, adult as well as aged persons also. Then fifth question, dash is the life process is not essential for an individual survival but survival of the species. So the correct answer is reproduction, because reproduction is a biological process in which organisms produce the young ones of the same species. It is one of the most important characteristics of living organisms. Reproduction is essential for the survival of species but not survival of individuals. Next, sixth question. Read the following statements about sexual reproduction and select the correct options. So it is a single parent. It is slower than sexual reproduction. It produces progeny that are genetically identical to the parent but not with one another. The progeny of asexual reproduction can be termed as clones. So the correct option is option C, 1 and 4th. When offsprings are produced from a single parent or without involvement of gamete formation, the reproduction is known as asexual. As a result, the offsprings that are produced are not only similar to one another but are also the exact copies of their parent. So such a group is morphologically and genetically similar individuals is known as clones. It is faster than sexual reproduction. Clones are individuals that are exactly same genetic makeup, direct bit only. Next, which of the following process results in the formation of clone bacteria? So the correct answer is binary fission. In binary fission, the parent organism divides into two halves, each half conforming an independent daughter organism. Binary fission involves mitosis. The resultant offsprings are biologically or genetically identical to the parent and each other. Next, during binary fission in amoeba, which of the following organelles is duplicated? So the organelles duplicated is first is nucleus. In amoeba, a simple binary fission occurs and nucleus is duplicated during this process, and binary fission involving mitosis. As a result, offsprings are genetically identical to their parent. Which of the following is not used in vegetative propagation? So the correct answer is option D, that is antherozoid, because in sexually reproducing organisms the male gamete is known as antherozoid or sperm and the female gamete is known as egg or ovum. They are not used for vegetative propagation. Finally, thank you.